Hey, it's the Empire, Geobox Empire, back from boxing. Now, man, current WBC, IBF, unified, undefeated world champion, Errol the Truth Spence has some words, man. He has some words and some heavy views on this Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight. And he says that, he's leaning toward Roy Jones Jr. And it's wild, man, because I made a video and I said that Roy Jones Jr. I had the title and I said y'all must have forgot. I have it in thumbnail and it says that Roy Jones Jr. Man, people were underestimating the guy. The guy is active. He was a goat in his prime, and people really sleep on the guy just because he went on longer in his career than he had to, right? But Errol Spence Jr. said Mike can still hit and look quick, still shit my inside, and he has a frowny face. And he said that right after they announced this Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight, and that's how he feels, man. He thinks Mike Tyson is a legend, but at this point in his career, he thinks, they say, if when you have wine, it ages with time, and fine wine ages with time, and he thinks out of the two goats that Roy Jones Jr. has aged well, and his aging has a more toward winning this fight. Roy Jones Jr. is most likely going to win this fight. That's what Errol Spence Jr. thinks. He thinks it might end bad for Mike Tyson. He thinks it might end bad for Mike Tyson. Now, I'm in the same boat, man. I got Roy Jones Jr. in this fight just because I talked about before. Roy Jones Jr. Well, at least I know Mike Tyson for sure was doing some kind of stem cell replacement therapy, basically giving him like an extra boost. It's not like steroids, but it's like a cell rejuvenation thing. It basically gets your hormonal levels back to what they used to be when you're in your prime, right? And I said if Roy Jones Jr. is doing the same thing, Roy Jones Jr. has a really good chance to win this fight. This is that one fight where I think both these fighters could take whatever they need to take to compete at the highest level, right? I just hope Roy Jones Jr. is taking this as seriously as Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson has been a long time, and let's be honest, if Mike Tyson wins his fight, a lot, especially if he does it in devastating fashion, people are going to want to see him versus elite top competition, and they're not going to want to see him versus a contender. They're going to want to see him versus a big name or a champion, right? And when I mean a big name, I mean like a Deontay Wilder, right? Alexander Povetkin, Anthony Joshua, or Tyson Fury. When Deontay Wilder was supposed to go to Russia to fight Alexander Povetkin, that was going to be the first time in boxing history a U.S. champion was going to travel to Russia to fight, defending his title. That would have been historic for Deontay Wilder. I'm not sure, but I'm positive that Mike Tyson has never fought in places like Russia, and I think if he did fight there, he'd definitely sell out arena, and Russia will welcome that because this pandemic going on, it'll definitely boost the economic wherewithal of Russia or wherever Mike Tyson fights, But in my opinion, Mike Tyson will probably make more money in a foreign location than fighting in America, for sure. Because you watch Tyson highlights, they're incredible. But Roy Jones Jr. is fighting as well. Let's not forget my boy Roy. And this is that fight that we never got to see, man. This is the fight we were robbed of. Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. And we're going to finally be able to see it, man. It's finally going to be answered once and for all. The GOAT versus GOAT. Who's going to turn out on top? And, man, this is fireworks. This is fireworks. But there you guys have it, man. Roy Jones Jr., Errol Spence thinks he has the advantage. He thinks it might end bad for Mike. And, wow. You know what? I agree with Errol Spence. This could end bad for Mike. Just because, in my opinion, Roy Jones Jr. has been active, and he's just more sharp just because he's been active. That's about it, really. That's literally about it. Now, if Mike Tyson had like one tune-up fight, I'd favor Mike Tyson at that point just because, he took a fight and before, and he's more sharp now. That's about it. A lot of people are talking about how Mike Tyson, the last three fights of his career, he was stopped, but it's been such a long time since he's been in the ring. He's obviously recovered from those knockouts, but Roy Jones Jr. has been in the ring, so he's still getting wear and tear on his body. Therefore, how susceptible is he to getting knocked out or just hit and his body's not reacting too well? It's probably a high probability. But Mike Tyson hasn't gotten hit in such a long time. Does he still have that warrior spirit? I think there's a certain point. If you haven't boxed in such a long time, when you get hit, that hit's gonna feel more heavy and it's gonna be more devastating just because you're not used to getting hit. Roy Jones Jr. could just have it in him. If when he gets hit, he can take it just because he's been boxing for so long. He's been taking hits from these elite level fighters. So there's a chance that when he gets hit by Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. has felt something similar to that. But when Mike Tyson gets hit, he hasn't got hit such a long time. How would he react? How would he react? So we're gonna see how this plays out, man. I'm following this story, man. This is a big deal. These fighters are gonna be, they're gonna be. This is gonna be crazy, man. It's gonna be crazy. Let me know how you guys feel about it, though. Who you guys got, Mike Tyson or Roy? Let me know how you guys feel about it, though. Like, comment, subscribe. This is Empire, GeoBoxing Empire. Peace. GeoBoxing Empire.